Hello, ninth graders. Welcome to our very last full week together, our last full week of ninth grade, and our last full week before some of the big and important things that we have coming up before the end of the school year, namely exhibition, which is this Friday on the 18th, and of course, as we've been discussing, POLs, which are taking place next week on Monday and Tuesday. So let's take a look at what we've got in store this week to prepare for those things. So first of all, I want to point out that a little bit different from the previous 9 weeks. Number 1 is actually not this rundown video. Number 1 you should have already watched, and it is actually a POL that I have prepared and recorded for you to review and use as an example. Hopefully this was really helpful for those of you that have never seen or done a POL before, and you might use this as a model or an example as you're preparing your own presentation of learning. And even for those of you that are experienced with presentations of learning, I hope that you found it helpful because, as we've discussed, our POL this year is a little bit different from what you might have done in the past, in that we're talking about how we have grown and progressed by looking at a specific project as opposed to everything that we did throughout the year. So I hope that for everyone there was a little something that you could use as an example or for direction in terms of being successful for our own presentations of learning this year. And I'm not going to show it here in the rundown video, but I do want to bring a few things to your attention. So if we look at this quick still from that video, from my presentation of learning, I want to bring a few things to your attention. First of all, notice I have come to my presentation prepared and professional. So I'm wearing clean clothes, I'm wearing clothes for presentations, my hair is done, and I've kind of shut myself into my room, a quiet space where I can be focused and where there's no distraction. Notice there's no neon lights in the background, there's no distracting posters, there's no dogs barking. So for your presentation, not only are we grading you based on the content of your presentation, but your presentation in general. So also looking at how you come to the presentation. Are you in pajamas? Are you laying down in bed? My expectation for your presentations of learning is that you come professionally prepared in a space where you can really focus. And another thing that I want to bring to your attention is at the very bottom, notice at the bottom of my slides, there's this section where it says note cards. And there's a bulleted list of information or talking points that I use to kind of drive my presentation. It is not a script word for word that I'm reading from start to finish. It is brief ideas or concepts that I want to remember to touch on and then expand on in my presentation. So this is how I encourage you to prepare for your presentation, is whether you use this space at the bottom of your slides or if you want to have note cards, prepare sort of a bulleted list of ideas or talking points that you'll use to drive your presentation. You should not be reading a script word for word from start to finish through your presentation, but you can refer to a bulleted list of information to help keep you on track and to help you not forget important things that you want to mention in your presentation. So those are just a few things I wanted to point out, and as you're preparing for your POLs this week, make sure that you're keeping both of those things in mind. All right, let's get back to Google Classroom. Number 2, of course, is the rundown video that you're watching now. And number 3, everything that you need in order to prepare and be successful for your presentations of learning is in this single number 3 assignment on Google Classroom for this week's module. So I'm going to go through each of them together. The first one is the POL criteria and rubric. I'm going to get to this in a moment, but just know that this is probably the most important of the 3 and the one that you should be using every single day during your async time. Number 2 is a link to Slide Carnival. This is where I get a lot of my template slides. Your slides should be professional, but also visually engaging and appealing. So look for some templates that you think would sort of fit that balance between fun and engaging and professional. Of course, you don't have to use a template. If you choose instead to do your own thing using maybe Google Slides or whatever platform you use, that's fine. But I do expect that each of you have customized slides. I don't want to see any blank slides with just text and white backgrounds. I expect each of you to approach the design of your slides with sincere effort. And so you can either choose a template to help you do that, or you can do it on your own, but everyone should be prepared to spend some time customizing your slides. All right. Your POL schedule is also linked in number 3. This has been on the newsletter for the past 2 weeks and not much has changed. However, if you do need to review when and who you are presenting to, you can find your scheduled POL slot in this document here. And lastly, let's go ahead. Like I said, I would spend some time talking about the criteria and rubric. This document you should be referring to every single day during your async time. You should not even try to prepare your POL slides and your presentation without first reviewing and becoming very familiar with this document. This document is where you go to ensure that you're hitting all the things that you need to hit, discussing all the prompts you need to discuss, answering all the questions you need to answer in order to be successful and do well with your presentation of learning. So the very first document, or the very first page of this document, is the criteria. And this sort of should drive the design of your presentation. So first you're going to start with a quick introduction. Who are you? Why does your POL matter? What are we about to witness, essentially? Number 2, or part 2, is where you get into your presentation. So what is the Mesa Garden project? You're going to briefly describe the project and then show your group your process documentary. So remember, in my example, that documentary or that film was on the very second slide. So that's around where your documentary, your process films should be, either on your first or second slide, okay? Then you're going to move on to talk about the development of skills. So what skills did you develop over the course of that project? And looking specifically at this bullet here, in what ways do you plan to apply or build on those skills to be a successful student in the coming years? Then you're going to switch gears and look at personal development. So how did you grow as an individual? What most impacted you about the project? And again, looking at application, how do you plan to apply or build on the personal growth that you experience in order to be a better person or citizen in the coming years? And this was not in my POL example, so forgive me, but each of you are going to finish your presentation with a parting question. So if you read carefully here, it says that in your panel between the people that love you, your teachers, your parents, whoever is coming to your POL, there's a lot of experience, a lot of insight, and just genuine love for you. So it's a really awesome opportunity to sort of ask for advice or seek wisdom from the people in the room about any question of your choice. You can approach this from like an academic standpoint. Maybe your question is, how should I best prepare for 10th grade? Or what can I do this summer to set myself up to be successful next year? Or maybe it's more personal, something like, you know, how do I make friends? Or how do I approach making meaningful relationships? Or what have you. But I want, whatever your question is, I want it to be very, very thoughtful and sincere. Okay? So a question that I don't want to hear is something like, how do you suggest I keep good grades, right? It should be more personal, it should be more thoughtful than that. And make sure that your presentation, as you are designing your slides and rehearsing, is somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes. Because part 3 and part 4, so the asking of your parting question, and then the panel discussing your parting question, and then also providing feedback, should be about 3 to 5 minutes. So ensure that you are being careful and staying within these time limits here. Okay? Now, the second page of this document is the rubric. So you're going to be graded on two different things, part 1 and part 2. So part 1 is the introduction, part 2 is the presentation. This is how you will be graded for those two parts. So ensure that you're reading carefully here so that as you're preparing, you can ensure that your presentation meets the higher scores here and that you are presenting in such a way that you should receive 3s and 4s. And then part 3 and part 4, so your parting question, and then your discussion with your panel after your presentation is going to be graded based on these things here. So look carefully again at this criteria so that you can ensure that as you're approaching these parts of your presentation, you again are scoring within a 3 and a 4. Now, can you fail a POL? Absolutely, you can fail a POL. If you do poorly and you score 1s and 2s, you will have to redo your POL during summer. So make sure that you're using your time wisely so that you can pass and do well and then enjoy your summer, right? If you have questions or if you're needing help, if you feel stressed out or overwhelmed, we are here for you to support you to be successful. Reach out to us. You can send us emails or see us in person, and we'd be happy to help you prepare or rehearse or brainstorm, whatever you need to be successful. But it all starts on Google Classroom under this week's module. Again, make sure you're reviewing all these materials carefully and using your async time wisely. I'll see you this week.